On Business Day today, what does Zambia stand to benefit from the upcoming Central Province Investment Expo in Central Province? And the kwacha's depreciation, what is its impact on Zambia's economy? We also talk about the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which is going to be hosted here in Africa, in Egypt to be particular. But how does this sit with Zambia's development agenda? These and more items on Business Day. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Business Day and my name is Judy Ngulube. We start off with the Central Province Expo, which is slated for 8th to about the 13th of October this year. It will target Zambia's economic sectors such as the manufacturing, tourism, mining and agri-processing. Now, the province boasts of being centrally located for investment and has got an environment for entrepreneurs. It has a theme of talking about investment, anchoring also issues of being accommodative to the business people here in Zambia. Now, Business Day caught up with the Permanent Secretary of Central Province, Chandakawe, to just find out how the Expo will benefit Zambia and how it will have a lasting effect, if this is going to have that effect on Zambians and its economic environment. Let's just go to the PS Central Province to tell us more details of this one.
For us, the people of Central Province, we're saying this is an opportunity we can't miss because we have the raw materials that we need to add value to. And we're saying, why are we not adding value to the raw materials that we have in Central Province? It's because we are lacking the industries that would come and add value to the raw materials that we have. I'll give you a very painful example, which the people of Central Province, all of us as a leadership, we've not received very well. Yes, it's investment for Zambia, but it was supposed to be in Central Province. But the lack of certain facilities, this investment was taken from Central Province to Lusaka. Marco Polo towels. 90% of the raw material which they use to make towels comes from Central Province, and in Kapiri particularly. The Chinese clay comes from Kapiri. We are the only one in Zambia that have this material in the huge quantities. But that plant was taken to Lusaka. So we're saying we can't be giving raw materials outside the province. We want this kind of investment to come in Central Province. What are we doing? We are inviting other people to come and use the raw material to make towels. So we are receiving another industry that is coming. We are growing soya, wheat. The bread that we're eating here in Lusaka, Copper Belt, is coming from Mukushi and some. We are the largest producers of wheat. So if you eat the bread here in Lusaka, you think we are growing the wheat here. No, the wheat is coming from Central Province. We are not adding value to our wheat because we don't have a bakery, we don't have industries to add value to our soya to make flour, this. So we are promoting value addition within Central Province. And we believe the expo that is coming will take advantage of the raw materials that we have so that we can add value to our produce. And so that when we add value to our produce within Central Province, we are able to create business opportunities, we are able to create jobs for the young people, we are able to create wealth amongst our people in that area. So that is what we are trying to do as Central Province. In response to that demand, we are looking at opening up areas such as the industrial park and the economical zone, which the Ministry of Commerce and Trade, ZD, are working at to see how best we can create these facilities so that within these economical zones, we have companies that are adding value to what is happening.
Thank you so much for still watching Business Day. This time around, we get to talk to our first guest right here in studio. Now, I'm honored to host a man who has held so many posts in terms of influence on Zambia's developmental agenda. Dr. Caleb Fundanga is coming through in studio today to talk to me as the ambassador for the Intra Africa Trade Fair, which is going to be held later sometime in December this year, to talk about connecting Africa in ways that we have never seen before, and making it happen is him being appointed as the Zambian ambassador for this very venture. Exciting things there. You are representing this as the ambassador to here, our country. Firstly, let us know a little bit more about this and how it's going to benefit Zambia.
Well, Intra-African Free Trade Area, as you know, was what is it called now? Africa Free Trade Area. Was promulgated at the meeting in Kigali of the African leaders in March this year. And at that meeting, they discussed the framework and they signed. I believe that our Minister of Foreign Affairs is the one who signed on behalf of Zambia. That's the first stage. The next stage now was to get countries to sign the various protocols. There are protocols on so many things relating to trade, trading services in goods, and all these other things that need to be engaged in. Once a country signs those protocols, then they become a member, a fully-fledged member. Now, it will become operational when 22 countries will have signed these protocols. Last time, when we had a meeting in Abuja in July, it was projected that then that number would be reached quite soon. So we are hoping that it can be reached, because there's no point in agreeing to do something and then you fail to sign the protocols.
Of course.
I know that sometimes our countries in Africa have been known for agreeing and then failing to sign.
Of course, the reputation of having to put up very nice things, documents, policies, but then implementation becomes an issue.
But from what I've heard, I think there is a lot of enthusiasm for it, and it is also good that it was signed in Kigali when President Kagame was the chair. He obviously represents an effective leader. So hopefully he will ensure that something which was signed under his watch does not succeed. I think he will ensure that it succeeds. Yes.
So when I hear that, I'm thinking of, we already have trading blocks in effect already. We have issues of the Commercial, you have the SADC coming through. How then does this particular fair sit in with those?
Okay, the fair itself is an instrument for achieving the objectives of the Intra-African Free Trade Area. So it will bring together all African countries to Cairo, at the Cairo International Exhibition Center, where they will show what they are capable of exporting. Obviously, if Africa has to trade with each other, the African countries have to trade with each other, they need to know what the other countries producing and so forth. So it's a showcase where everybody can know Zambia has got this to sell to the African countries.
What scale of entrepreneurs or investors are to be there?
Everybody is expected to be there. So we expect, therefore, that there will be big companies. Like here, for instance, big would probably mean some mining companies, some big companies like the Zambifs in agriculture, the Trade Kings and the others, the Zambia Sugar. These are our big companies. So one expects that these will take up the challenge and go and exhibit, and they've got the potential to participate and also to export. So we hope that all the big Zambian companies will be there, and there are a lot of big companies now. They are growing by the day, so we hope they can all be there. But at the same time, the future of the country also lies in medium and small scale enterprises. Yes, they are the trees that grow in the forest. So we hope that obviously most of them don't have the capacity to fund their participation, but the government is also expected to exhibit. There will be stands for governments, big stands, where the smaller companies that will go there can be, can be accommodated.
So this will also speak to the trade barriers that most African countries have been talking of.
Well, the concept of a free trade area, as free implies, is that trade between the member countries takes place without these tariffs and so forth, and the non-tariff barriers. So that there is free movement of goods and services between the members. That's the first step of integration. Now, the most important thing to realize is that a country on its own doesn't have the capacity to grow beyond the domestic market. So you can't be a very rich country if you are only producing for yourselves. If you look at history, the countries that have succeeded into growing their economies are countries that have been very successful at export performance because they've produced beyond the consumption levels of their populations.
Okay.
In recent times, we've had Japan, we've got South Korea, Germany, and there are many countries you can name. All of them succeeded on the basis of good export performance.
Talking about export, Dr. Fundanga, when you look at Zambia's BOP, the balance, you know, are entrepreneurs and investors receptive to this? If you look at those in Zambia, knowing that Zambia obviously is no secret that it's an import-oriented country, with such interactions coming up, such forums, how do they respond to such?
Okay, the problem here is that we have taken export to be synonymous with copper. But Zambia has got a lot of things it can export. Okay, within the mining sector, you have seen, for instance, even precious stones. We produce a lot. Some of them are not even recorded because they can easily be spirited out of the country. But those are things we hope we can showcase, and hopefully they can be exported openly, transparently, so that the proceeds can be recorded. But if you go outside copper, there are many other things. Look at, for instance, agriculture. There are so many things. Okay, again, agriculture here is normally discussed in terms of maize, whether we can feed ourselves. But maize itself is an export commodity. And we have seen in times when there have been drought in the region, Zambia sometimes has stood out as one of the few countries with a surplus. But the problem always seems to be that we don't want to export. You find there are more restrictions on export of maize when we have a surplus, rather than allowing the farmers to export so that they can earn more and therefore produce more. So one hopes that if Zambia wants to compete, it's such things that have to be addressed. But we are now producing a lot of things we never imagined we could produce before. Look at wheat, for example. I remember when I was young, wheat was seen as a temperate climate crop. But I believe we are self-sufficient now. Look at rice. There are many varieties of rice now. You can talk of Mongo rice, you can talk of Chama rice, you can talk of all sorts of rices, from Zambese rice and the like. Okay, it's not our staple food, and that is in itself an advantage, because it means even if we exported all of it, there won't be complaints like we complain with maize, right? The whole of West Africa, that's a staple food, and they're importing from Asia.
So are those people involved in that, the people in the agri sector, like the example you've given of wheat, take advantage of investment forums such as these that will help them invest some of the export some of their produce?
Well,
they take the opportunities.
Our role is to ensure that they become aware that these products they are producing have got a big market in other African countries, and the whole idea of a free trade area is to make it easier for them to export. Zambia has got the advantage of having 8 neighboring countries, and that is already a lot. But you should also consider the infrastructure, roads. Can we export these goods so easily? So when government is planning its budgets, some of the things they've taken into account is if we want to export beyond the copper, we must provide for a route to export to Congo, to Tanzania, and the other neighboring countries, Zimbabwe and the like. There are other things in export. For instance, I always talk about language. We are next to DR Congo, and it's a huge market, the biggest producer of copper in Africa. How much are we benefiting from having such a huge market next to us? I'm saying huge because Congo has got its own economic problems. So certain things which they can do, they are not doing. That's an opportunity for us. But because most of us cannot even speak basic French, we are afraid of even asking for something to allow us to go into Congo. So a country that wants to be export-oriented must also have certain soft skills
Okay. What would you say to people who complain of sensitization and information involving export of goods and services not trickling down to the appropriate people who are supposed to be sending out these goods?
Well, I think there should be export promotion agents, and that's what we have here. I think ZDA now has taken over some of these roles. Such institutions are important, and they must have people who are skilled in knowing exactly what it takes to capture markets. Other countries also have got import banks. We used to have one here many years ago. Unfortunately, it collapsed. But it's absolutely essential that many of these exporters have ready finance and so forth. They can't be financed by most of these commercial banks. The cost is higher and so forth. This is an institution which has got a developmental role, so perhaps it can offer some softer facilities for some of the, especially the emerging export companies. And if we can do this, I think it's possible to capture some of the markets. Of course, you have to scale up also. You can't just talk of exporting agricultural produce. You have to think of producing manufactured goods or agricultural products with value added and so forth. This requires more skills than just producing agricultural crops. But I must also say that even agricultural crops do require a lot of technical inputs in order that they can win the markets abroad. You can't just take rotten mangoes or rotten bananas to the export market, because in the export market they are very, very careful about quality. So we have to invest into all these things so that when we export, they can say the Zambian banana is the best banana on the market.
Definitely. Now, coming back, zeroing into the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, it's going with transforming Africa as one of its anchors, one of its themes. When you look at this theme of transforming Africa, how can Zambia also be transformed in this vein, seeing that we'll be taking part in this one?
Yeah, well, I think obviously if Zambia wants to move forward, to be transformed, it must think beyond copper. So if we can have a lot of goods which we can sell in the African market, we will create more jobs. Currently, there is a crisis amongst the youth here. There are no jobs. The export sector provides an opportunity for creating very profitable jobs, very productive jobs, rather than, it's not just providing somebody with a job, but give them a productive job so that they can create wealth and they can also earn enough money to make their lives comfortable. That is the ultimate objective of everybody. How you translate a comfortable life depends on individuals, but a good income can give you a comfortable life. Now, export business is the one which can guarantee us. As I said, the capacity to grow just by losing the local market is limited by the size of the market. And the African countries are small markets. Zambia, 13 million, whatever, if it's 15. Zimbabwe is the same, Malawi the same, Botswana probably 2 million. You can't do much with these small populations.
Numbers.
Yeah.
Everything is in the numbers.
But the whole African market is 1.2 currently. And projections are that by 2050, we'll have 2 billion Africans. These will be individuals ready to buy things. So it will be one of the larger markets. At that time in 2050, probably Asia will have a much lower population than Africa. So Africa is the future. But it can only be a future if we invest into growth, into production, into export. Then we will realize that future. You've seen what the Asians have done. I mean, countries like South Korea, people say that in 1964, the GDP per capita in South Korea was lower, or about the same as Zambia. If you go there today, I was there in May this year, it's a different world. There are multiples above what we claim is our per capita. So that has only happened because the Koreans were very productive. They invested into the export sector. I can tell you, when we were students in Europe, we used to eat carpenter from South Korea.
Wow.
We were even buying some, when we were in Germany, you could even buy inswa from something similar to inswa from South Korea. So the South Koreans have been exporting everything. It's not only the technical products, but they've been exporting everything that they could export. And they've won the market. How could South Korea export carpenter to UK, to Germany?
Those are some
And
of the
Zambia
lessons that we
couldn't-
can learn from,
And
isn't
Zambia
it?
couldn't, and yet we've got better carpenter than what we were eating in Europe.
Definitely.
Yes,
Those are some of the lessons Zambia can learn from, isn't it?
Exactly.
Dr. Fundanga, I appreciate you coming
Thank
to
you very
Business Day.
much. Thank
All
you
right,
very
we're
much.
here.
Yeah.
We'll definitely be following this very closely, seeing how it progresses as well as how it pans out on the actual days that it will be taking place. And of course,
Well,
afterwards,
Mhm.
how will we benefit from
We
it?
will have sensitization workshops here in Lusaka as well as on the Copper Belt. The announcements will be made. And tomorrow we'll be having a press conference with the minister so that we can explain exactly. We are working very closely with the ministry and the government in general because it is for the Zambian government. All of us are working flat out because we want Zambia to succeed.
We all want a better Zambia, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming through. Thank you
Thank
so much. I have been talking to Dr. Caleb Fundanga. He is coming through as ambassador on the forthcoming Intra-African Trade Fair, which is going to be held in Egypt, Africa, on December 11th through to 17th of December this year. Something that Zambia can help in terms of sustainable development for a developing country like ours. You're watching Business Day. You are watching Business Day. We have just been talking about investment opportunities as well as export opportunities for Zambia. And now we move on to issues of the exchange rate. Let's see how our monies are performing. And this time the kwacha comes through with continued depreciation. But what is causing this and how can it affect Zambia's economy? We did feature a few people on Morning Live, and this is what they had to say in regards to the ripple effects of the depreciation of the kwacha on Zambia's economy.
I think there are many compounding effects that have caused the depreciation of the kwacha. First and foremost, you will note that the dollar has strengthened so much. The greenback has strengthened, so we are coming from a background where we are working against a very powerful currency. Yeah, the US dollar has gained significant ground since the changes that President Trump has been, instituting and the direction that the Feds have taken in the US. Yeah. Aside of that, also there are factors also that have compounded this locally, and we should at least be looking at issues pertaining to the price of fuel. Yeah, we should be looking at the price of the main export that we have, copper, meaning that ultimately we've had a lot more to do with the supply of the kwacha. I think the foremost thing is to look at production. How productive are we? And looking at our rate of productivity, how much of that which we produce is being exported. So the export earnings will determine how much inflows we have. And that is what is going to mostly cushion the effect on the kwacha. But aside of that also, we must also be addressing the structure of this economy, because much of what we export is in the form of base metals, copper and the like. And when these exports are made, the earnings don't come back. And as a result, we have this challenge that we've had for so many years. We export, and the numbers show that we have got significant exports. But the export earnings are not, retained in this domestic economy, no. Everything that goes out, the money is anchored somewhere else, it's domiciled somewhere else. And ultimately, we see that the economy needs to be remodeled. We need to diversify so that much of what we export, will have an inducement of inflows coming in, and then we can retain the kwacha, value, because we have more, export earnings coming back in the form of, US dollars being retained. That's one. Then secondly, also, we need to look at the things that we are doing also. Yeah. On the fiscal side, there are things that we can do to support the monetary side. Yeah. And the budget has just been release for 2019. So the measures that are being proposed there need to be implemented to the hilt. If we have, a slackened approach towards budget implementation, we are not going to realize the full impact of what is expected of the 2019 budget. But so far, I believe that a lot more could be done, because we also have a challenge with debt servicing. We are spending a lot of our earnings on debt servicing. And the fact that our debt is in dollars, it means that we are mopping up everything and converting it and expaying our debt. Now, by so doing, we are bound to also have a challenge on the ability for us to build even our reserves. Yeah. So it's a big issue that needs to be looked at, but it's not insurmountable. This is something that we can manage and we are able to fix.
All right, so that wraps up Business Day for today. Thank you so much for having stayed with us. Join us next week, Thursday, 19:30, for more business information from here, the Pulse of Television. On behalf of the entire production crew for Business Day, I'm Judy Ngulube.